Hello, I'm Philip Drost. Welcome to Canada's Court. Well, it's time for the Final Four in March Madness. All the upsets are over. It's now just the four best teams going for it. Both on the men's and the women's side, we've got our Final Four teams. The women will play on Friday, and the men will play on Saturday. The women's finals on Sunday, and the men's finals on Monday. So another 4 excellent days of basketball. And Coach O's been chatting March Madness with us the whole way through, and we got him back on today. Coach, welcome back. How are you feeling?
I'm always going to start off the same way. It's truly an honor to be on Canada's Court. Truly an honor. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it. As always, it's also an honor to have you on. So it goes both ways. But especially an honor because we got the king of brackets over here. Holy cow, man. When I invited you to the Canada's Court Bracket Challenge, I didn't expect you to sweep away the competition like that. You've been having a good couple weeks of watching basketball.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Listen, like we talked a little bit about it in the beginning rounds. I think what we're starting to see is there's a mixture of how talent affects winning. There's also a mixture of how experience affects winning. And definitely now we're looking at all these high-level coaches making these adjustments. But now we're looking at it. We're going into Final Four now. And we can honestly say we got 2 really good matchups now going into final weekend of competition.
All right, so let's take a look at the leaderboard. You're going to like this. Your bracket is in the 99th percentile on ESPN. 910 points. That's 80 ahead of the person who's in second place. You got 3 of the final 4 correct. I guess I just got to say congratulations. I mean, you haven't won it yet. We'll say you haven't won it yet because there's some people who picked Purdue who are behind you, and if Purdue wins, then that changes things. But that's a pretty good bracket for all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, I got lucky a little bit along the way, So
and the other thing is you were a game away from having a completely accurate Final Four because you had Duke beating NC State. So that's impressive.
Oh, yeah. I was just looking at the way, and by the way, shout out to NC State for making it this far. One of my former colleagues is a grad assistant at NC State, right? So, Rudy Mace, if you're hearing this, man, shout out to you for making it to Final Four, man. I got to give my shout outs.
You got to. So let's also give some shout outs to the second and third place people. We've got Ingrid DeYoung in second, and then we've got David McDonald in third. They've both picked Purdue. So if Purdue wins, it looks like Ingrid DeYoung wins. But if UConn wins, then it looks like Coach O, you're taking away the championship this year. So how are you feeling? How are you feeling ahead of the UConn versus Alabama matchup? What do you think how do you think that's going to go?
Oh, man. Where do we start? We talked a little bit about how different teams have different pressure points that they could put on other teams' defenses. The reason why I picked UConn to win the whole thing was just because I feel like UConn has many ways that they could hit different offenses, right? They got really good guards. They have shot making, and they could throw the ball inside and just be able to play. And when you're looking at, I would say the other teams in the NCAA, like right now in the Final Four, I would say like right now, when teams are prepping for those matchups, they kind of know how the other team is going to hit them. Whereas the thing with UConn is just that you have to stop so many different things. They got so many different counters, which explains why up until now they've beaten everybody by double digits.
The closest game I think was like 17 points, and that's a lot. That's especially college ball when you're only getting up to 80 points or whatever. That's a big margin.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's why, like, for me, like, I kind of said, like, okay, well, UConn won, having been there last year. They have the really good opportunity to do it again. But I'm just looking at just the gameplay, right? It just feels like it's one of those where, like, it's a team that's bound for the national championship, And they're going up against a really good matchup in Alabama. Yeah, here's my thing now. Alabama is we all know Nate Oates' philosophy, offensive philosophy. He wants to get wide open threes, make some threes, and shots at the rim. Okay? If the 3 doesn't fall, right, and you are putting yourself in a situation where you have to try to go get a bucket at the rim, UConn's interior defense is really good, really good, which leads to them getting easy baskets at the other side. That's why their field goal percentage scoring is so high. That's my only concern right now. It's Alabama will rely too much on the three, and I have a feeling that if we're gonna look back at the game after when it happens next week, that will probably be the main reason why Alabama, struggles. If I was to say that.
What's it going to take then? For let's say for argument's sake, Alabama's not going to take this line down. They're gonna go for it. They're a game away from the national championship game. What's it going to take on their end to be able to at least stand up with and potentially beat this juggernaut that has been UConn all season?
A lot of people, what a lot of people will say is that it's easy to say, like, you have to make shots and you have to get stops. What I'm going to really pay attention to is Alabama's decision making, right? A lot of times with being a team that likes to score at the rim, what a lot of teams tend to do is that they have sometimes what happens is that you make turnovers or you make bad decisions at the rim because you're so focused on trying to get to the basket that a lot of times you don't make plays off 2 feet, right? The last game that I watched when they ended up beating Clemson, when they beat Clemson, that was one of the things that I saw. There was a stretch in the game where they weren't really making the plays that they needed to play, that they needed to win the game. What really saved them was that Sears was really good on the guard play. That's what really saved them. But for me, what I noticed was that there was a stretch in the game where I really started questioning Alabama's decision making, if that makes sense.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think, like we said, UConn looking pretty good, but anything can happen. And even if they are relying too much on the three, that's the kind of thing where if they are hot, that changes everything, right? This is one of the opportunities. It's so fun to kind of pick your brain about some of these more, I'd say coaching decisions when you've got a week to prepare for one team. The cliche is going to be, if you ask the coaches right now, we're only thinking about Friday. We're only thinking about Saturday. But if you're the head coach of UConn, there's got to be a part of you that's thinking about the day after. Is that fair to say? Like, is there, obviously most of your game plan is going to go towards Alabama, the team you're playing. But how much of your brain power is kind of dwelling on who you might face in the next round?
I got this opportunity to just be in similar situations this year. A lot of times as a coach, your job is to keep your team focused, right? So as a coach, your brain is always going. You're thinking about the next thing, and the next thing, right? But as a coach, what you got to do is you really got to focus on keeping your team prepared for what's about to happen. Right now, you're going into a game that you are expected to win. Right. So with that being said, automatically what you'll notice is that Alabama is going to come out and Alabama's probably going to be a bit more looser. It's going to play a bit more freely. They're not going to be as tight. Right. Because you're playing against UConn. So I'm interested to seeing the first 6 to 7 minutes of that game. Right.
Yeah.
Does UConn just go right off the bat and apply that pressure? Or does Alabama kind of like throw the first punch? It'll be super interesting to see.
Well, like you said, they're absolutely not the favorites. I mean, nobody in our bracket pool here has Alabama in the finals. So clearly they are by far not the favorites. And you're right. That does give you the kind of looseness and the kind of freedom to, hey, we're not expected to win this game. So not that they're, obviously they're going to try and win. But I mean, like, you're kind of playing with found money almost. Like you weren't assumed to be here, and so now you've got the confidence that you are there, and then now you can have that carrying forward.
It could go both ways, right? It could be a shock to this number one team that's expected to go all the way, or what ends up happening is that you could just come out and just surprise them, right? And especially with Alabama's playing style, right? We talked about it. Get to the paint, penetration, kick out for open threes, push the ball in transition, try to get a layup within 7 seconds. That's the kind of game that they want to play. The thing with that kind of play style is that it's very volatile, right? So with that being said, the shots that you've been hitting all year, they may or may not fall in the next game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Alabama has an inside presence where they want to give the ball inside, play, and all that kind of stuff, which is the opposite of what we're seeing with Purdue, right?
You transitioned so perfectly. You read my mind there. We've talked a lot about Zach Edey on the podcast, and rightfully so. 40 points and 16 rebounds to make it to the Final Four for Purdue. I'm not a draft expert by any means, but his play has to be turning some heads. This is like that is some like historic numbers.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And we're really going into an interesting matchup because what I'm going to be looking at is the man in the middle. The two big boys in the middle. That's what I'm going to be looking at. Here is, first of all, we got to give our credit to NC State for winning all these games in the span of the number of days that they've been doing it. Credit to them to be able to prepare and just keep going. But going back to what we said, as an 11 seed, nobody expected you to be there. So you could come out and shock a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Here's where the X's and O's come in. You now have your two big guys with DJ Burns and Zach Edey. The bigs, I feel, are going to neutralize themselves inside. Mm-hmm. We know Purdue has played all year with all developing all these counters. But up until now, right? Mm-hmm. Up until now, one, Zach Edey has been unstoppable. But two, NC State really hasn't had – other teams really haven't had an answer for DJ. Because once DJ gets going, it's easy for him to be able to get everybody else going. Everybody else feeds off of that. Mm-hmm. So now we're going into an interesting situation where as NC State, yes, you're there, but you're not satisfied with being there, right? With that being said, who's going to make the next play? Who's going to be the next person to be able to push this? Who's going to be? We know who the 1A is, but say both stars cancel themselves out. Mm-hmm. Who's the next person to make the plays?
It will be really interesting to see how much they just let those two guys play against each other and how often they throw the double there, because both guys are so big and they've kind of made so many other baskets off of just being bigger and stronger and pushing the other guy away. And now that's not quite as possible, but they're still both immensely talented. So I'm very curious to see how much there's going to be like double teams thrown their way and what that looks like.
Oh, yeah. Actually, what's actually very interesting to see is for the first time, maybe both sides may not see any double teams, right? Maybe they're going to ask these guys to have to play one-on-one. Yeah. So now how much did the game really open up? Yeah. For Zach Edey, who has improved his passing, how does the game really open up now? Because now you're in a situation where you have to go score. I'm interested to see this because now, if I'm NC State, I want to see how consistently can Zach Edey score one-on-one. Because you got to think, it's like a lot of times what ends up happening is that they'll throw the ball in the post. If he gets there, boom, boom, make a read, right? Mm-hmm. If they double, he makes the right passes. Yep. If they don't double, he scores. But now say NC State goes into this game and they say, DJ, you're going to guard him one-on-one the whole time. Is Zach Edey going to score consistently, put pressure on DJ Burns every time down the floor? That's the matchup that we will have to see.
It's going to be fun
for this one.
It's going to be fun. I'm very also curious. I think one of the big things is if DJ Burns gets into foul trouble early, they're in some trouble because Zach Edey has been drawing fouls left and right. He's basically lived at the free throw line. So if either of those guys get into foul trouble early, that's going to have a huge impact on the game, I think.
For us to be able to see how the game is going to be officiated. That's why I said how interested. I said the same thing about the UConn game as I'm going to say about this game. We're going to see off of the first few post possessions how the referees are going to officiate this game. Are they going to let the two bigs bang?
Mm-hmm. And it will be really, I mean, like they're both so strong and so big. I know I've said that already, but yeah, it's going to be like almost like a vintage matchup here. It's going to be for basketball sickos and just big basketball fans. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So on your bracket, you chose. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, and it's like we probably couldn't have draw it up any better because size-wise and body type-wise, this is probably the only time that both of them have matchups that they're going to be facing one-on-ones. So now how much does the game open up for either side? Who opens up the game up more? Does NC State put a bit more pressure in transition, right? Do they try to attack a little bit more in transition? Or does Purdue just stick to what they do, slow the game down, and just allow Zach Edey to maybe like create those plays and those mismatches? It'll be fun to watch.
If he has another 40-point game, I'm going to be on team draft him to the Toronto Raptors. That's for absolute sure.
For sure.
So your bracket is you have UConn and Purdue in the finals with UConn winning it all. Do you still feel confident in those selections?
You know, last week you got me. You got me to last week you got last week you got
Yeah, I felt a little bad about that one because I also, I was like, oh, the Gonzaga game today. Let me put up the clip about, Coach O saying Gonzaga's I'll be doing well. That's great. I love it. A few hours later, it was,
I love it. No, I love it. I love it.
Sorry, I feel bad. I threw you under the bus.
No. We could get it wrong sometimes. But you know what? I think, again, I'm going back to what I said. I think UConn just having experience, a couple of players that have been there already, the coach that has done it, I feel pretty confident that in UConn still. By next week, I think we'll be talking about UConn probably repeat as national champions.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I still chose Purdue. Even if I don't win the bracket, I will feel good if I picked the final winner. I don't do that very often. And it'll be especially cool to have a Canadian potentially win it. But it's going to be a lot of fun basketball. And so let's go a step further. Let's assume maybe this is a little dangerous, but if the matchup goes to UConn and Purdue, because we're not going to have a podcast in between now and then, what do you think that would look like? What do you think that would look like?
I think UConn's versatility will probably provide a lot of issues, right? Because like I said, like UConn has different ways that they could attack you. They could score off the pick and roll. They got catch and shoots. They cut really, really, really well. They push the ball in transition. They get stops. They have a lot of guys that can put pressure on the rim. And if Zach Edey is your only point of attack, is your only defensive point at the rim, it's rough. It's rough. That's the main reason why I was very confident in just saying that, UConn has a chance to really repeat this year,
Well, you've now officially jinxed them. So I feel even better about my Purdue pick. I'm just kidding.
For sure. No, but Purdue got a lot of things going, and I think I think we're probably gonna get UConn and Purdue in the finals, and that would be something very interesting. Don't want to jinx it, but it's a feel. I could say feel.
Yeah. You can say feel. You can say we're not. We don't got a crystal ball. We can't tell you what's exactly going to happen. You shouldn't place any bets based off what we say. This is just our guesses. We know some stuff. I mean, stuff. I just talk to people who know stuff, but stuff. So I give a bit more credence to what Coach O says, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But then on the other side, we've got the women's bracket, which has been terrific till now and continues to be. Cailtin Clarke, who for Iowa, obviously, if anyone's watching this, they know who Cailtin Clarke is. That would be weird.
The women's side has broken TV numbers. The viewership has gone through the roof. So I'm pretty sure people know who Cailtin Clarke is.
I would say so. If you don't, I don't know why you're watching this podcast. I'm very confused.
Yeah, I know.
But just, you talk about, the viewership numbers being completely broken. She's the biggest star in either tournament, and it's not even a question. How fun has it been to kind of watch her? I mean, the one viral clip, I forget what the opposing player's name was on LSU, who just, she's trying to guard Cailtin Clarke. Cailtin Clarke drains it on her, and she just shrugs. And that's how I feel like every player is at this point. It's just a shrug emoji every time you go up against her.
Absolutely. But let me go back to this Monday. I was really this was the first time. I think this is a great era for women basketball because we haven't really talked about how much of an impact it is, right? You're looking at NCAA Division One numbers in terms of viewership for the women that are higher than the men's in a lot of situations, right? Um, this kind of takes us back to, you remember when back in the day we used to have players used to stay 2-3 years in college, come out in their fourth year and all that kind of stuff. We don't have that on the men's side, but on the women's side, they're doing that. But then what that does is that actually creates fans, that creates attachment to certain programs, right? Just being able to have someone like Angel Reese and somebody like Caitlin Clarke being able to be these role model for these young girls, for them to be able to watch. But then also us as men, what it does is that it kind of like gives us perspective, because we know we're able to follow the journey of these players. I kind of find that on the men's side right now, it's finish playing, play 1 year, and then bounce, just leave.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's hard for people to get attached to, say, a Duke, a Kentucky, to how things used to be, right? Because these players just end up leaving right away.
Yeah, they go one and done. They're in the NBA. They're sometimes they're a key player, but usually they're someone who's coming off the bench. Whereas there's something really fun about having the consistency on the rosters, like you said, building those relationships. I mean, Caitlin Clarke setting the all-time scoring record. Like, you don't get that if someone plays just one season, right? So to have that, it's been a lot of fun to watch. You also get rivalries too, right?
Absolutely.
You get people who don't like each other, which you don't get if everyone only plays for one season. Then it's like, okay, yeah, no, I know you. Okay, fine, we lost you one. I never see you again. But this, it's like, okay, you can see some bad blood between teams.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, on Monday, I was able to just watch, like, what happened Monday, I think, is that I'm a basketball lover, right? I consider myself an aficionado.
I'd say so.
Just being able to be watching, just being able to watch the 7 p.m. game where it's LSU versus Iowa, right? I'm watching it. And then for some of my players, right, to come and be interested in women basketball, that just says that it's been coming a long way. Not only that, the star power in those games is something that we need to talk about, because you got to think about it. We had Angel Reese and Flau'jae Johnson, and you had Caitlin Clarke on the other side. But then don't forget, you have Paige Beckers in the 9 p.m. game and Juju Watkins. I have never seen anything like what I saw from Juju. Juju is insane, and she's just a freshman.
It's wild, and we got to give credit to also Canadian Aaliyah Edwards on UConn.
Shout out to Aaliyah Edwards.
That's another potential Canadian who could be going to the finals here. I mean, UConn's got a tough road to face as they face Iowa. What are you going to be watching for in that game? What are you looking forward to there?
In the Iowa UConn game, to be honest, like on the women's side, what I really appreciate is just that they run, like, if you really want to know basketball, like if you watch the women's side, like you'll learn so much stuff, right? Because teams are so disciplined. You have to set screening angles a certain way and all that kind of stuff. And I find that for young players, if you watch the women's game, what you'll do is that you'll learn a lot more than you do in the men's game, because what the men tend to do is that they tend to give up positioning to overcompensate with their athletic abilities, right? Where it's like, maybe I don't have to set this screen right now because I could shoot over somebody. You don't have that luxury in the women game, because the game is more about the angles that you set. How do you cut off the ball? How are you using this pick and roll, right? Whereas I think for the men's side, a lot of times we just think that we could just shoot over everybody, right? So for that game specifically, what I really am looking for is, obviously I want to see what is something I've been keeping up, throughout every round was, how are people guarding Caitlin Clarke? Like, who's putting body on them? And the clip that you were talking about, Iowa, they decided to put Haley Van Lith, who's listed at 5'7", on Caitlin. Caitlin's all of 6 foot, right? So then it's like, after it's interesting. So do certain teams have certain players that can match up size-wise with Caitlin Clarke? if you do have somebody size where that can match up with them, can they keep up with the foot speed if they pick her up because she shoots it from the logo?
Yeah.
But now here's the next thing too. UConn hasn't gone deep into their bench during these playoffs, right? So like you're wondering like how like is there going to be an exhaustion factor, right? Because the only way that you can really put a lot of pressure and disrupt the Iowa offense is you got to pick up a bit higher up the floor.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun to watch. Like you said, the start power on that side is just so high. So it's gonna be we're gonna have a very entertaining weekend. I mean, it's not the same. You know, at the start of the tournament, you've got hundreds of games going. Basically, it feels like now you've got just like really good games. You have the best teams, right? The upsets are great,
Absolutely.
but when you get the best teams, that is also just. And I just hope we don't get like. I don't want any blowouts. I don't want anyone to, even if let's say NC State beats Purdue. I got Purdue winning. I would much rather that game went down to the wire and you just saw great basketball from both ends because that's what we've been getting, and it's just such a joy. You mentioned you're a basketball aficionado. You don't want to watch blowouts, and this is so. I hope UConn doesn't come out with another blowout, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We got a lot of, and this on both sides, right? So I kind of like how the Final Four weekend is because they kind of stagger those games, right? So we're able to catch a Friday game, catch a Friday 2 games, catch the Saturday 2 games, then the Sunday final, and then be able to see how it is on the Monday, right?
I don't know how I'm going to plan any of my wedding. I got a wedding in a month and a half, and I don't know how I'm going to plan any. I got a full weekend full of basketball. I work all week, and then I'm just going to go sit in front of the TV for the remaining weekend. So I'm going to have to be very productive Saturday and Sunday morning. That's what I got to do.
Absolutely. And for us, basketball people, like it's so interesting because like we get to see how the playoffs end up in college. And after that, it's a couple of weeks and then we're right away into the NBA playoffs. So
we're right there. We're right there. I'm sure we'll be talking even more about basketball then. We'll have lots to talk about then too. So we're going to be busy, Coach. We're going to be busy.
Oh yeah. This is I wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna. There's a little bit off the path here, but I don't think we're gonna be watching too much Toronto Raptors basketball in the playoffs. So it doesn't look like it.
But with that being said, it gives us something to look forward in the future. So
it does, and that's kind of the fun thing for. I know a lot of Raptors fans tune into this podcast. It is fun to see some of these college guys. I mean, Zach Edey is a guy who could conceivably fall to where the Raptors will pick. So it's going to be interesting to see, how he kind of reacts to, being matched up against another huge guy and all that stuff. But Coach O, we got so much more fun basketball to come. I love it. I love it.
Oh, we're just getting started. Canadascourt, the place to be.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? We covered it all. I think we hit it all.
We hit it all. No, I appreciate you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate you too, Coach. That's all. We'll talk more soon, I'm sure.
Yes, we will.